A 25-cent pack of ramen noodles, not a meal, a unit of currency. Inside certain American prisons, ramen functions as money, not metaphorically. People use it to pay debts, settle favors, purchase labor, and hold savings, the same way you use dollars. Except the Federal Reserve had nothing to do with it. Most stories stop there. Prisoners are resourceful, isn't that something? But there's a detail buried inside this story that reframes the whole thing. And it has nothing to do with creativity. It has to do with hunger. And once you see it, the 25-cent price tag stops being the interesting number. The number underneath it does. Ramen didn't arrive in prison economies by accident. Something had to leave first. For decades, cigarettes were the dominant currency inside American prisons. Not a movie cliche. Documented, real, studied. Cigarettes were standardized, widely desired, slow to spoil, and came in identical units. They worked as money the same way gold worked as money. Predictable, consistent, no argument about quality from one pack to the next. Then, starting in the 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s, prison systems began banning smoking. Health concerns, fire risk in enclosed spaces, secondhand exposure litigation. The bans worked. Smoking dropped. But they also did something nobody anticipated. They erased the currency. A prison economy doesn't stop when you take away its money. It finds new money. Whatever filled the gap had to survive storage, break into smaller units, move easily between people, stay identical pack to pack, and be wanted by nearly everyone in the building. Ramen cleared every box. So ramen won, but that only tells you what replaced cigarettes. It doesn't explain why ramen's value inside these facilities was actively climbing. That's where the story turns. In 2016, a sociologist named Michael Gibson-Light spent months inside an unnamed Arizona state prison documenting its informal economy. What he found wasn't noodles getting swapped under bunks. It was a functioning monetary system. People were storing ramen like savings, lending it at interest, paying other inmates to clean their cell, do their laundry, or translate legal documents they couldn't read themselves. Some inmates had accumulated enough packs to have what you could only call leverage. Real influence over what happened to them in an environment where they had almost none. Gibson-Light found that ramen had become the unit of account. That's a specific economic term. Not just something you trade, but the thing you use to price everything else. Labor, services, favors, information, all of it was being calculated in noodle packs. The informal economy of that prison ran its arithmetic in ramen. And then he found something that doesn't fit the prisoners are resourceful story. The value of ramen wasn't holding steady. It was rising. And it wasn't because ramen was getting scarce. Multiple inmates Gibson-Light interviewed described the same thing. Going to bed hungry often enough that it stopped feeling like an event. It had become background, normal. Ramen, the ability to have it, store it, trade for more of it, had become a way of managing something the institution wasn't managing for them. Prison food budgets in the United States have been under sustained documented pressure. Some facilities dropped to under $2 per person per day. $2 for 3 meals. What that produces in practice isn't just unpleasant food. It's a caloric gap, an amount of food that isn't enough in an environment where you have no way to supplement what's on your tray. Gibson-Light's central finding was this. Ramen wasn't just filling the currency vacuum left by the cigarette ban. It was filling a food vacuum simultaneously. People wanted it because they needed the calories. And when something is both a basic necessity and a tradable good, its value doesn't just add, it compounds. The currency didn't emerge from creativity, it emerged from a shortage. This pattern doesn't appear occasionally. It appears every time the conditions line up. In World War II, prisoner of war camps, Allied soldiers ran a cigarette economy documented in precise detail by R.A. Radford, a British economist who was himself a prisoner at the time. In American federal prisons in the 2000s, cans of mackerel filled the same role so consistently they earned a nickname, Max. And their exchange rates were understood across multiple facilities without anyone organizing it. A closed population, restricted access to outside money, limited supply of goods, basic needs going unmet. Put those 4 things together, and commodity money doesn't occasionally appear. It appears every single time. It isn't improvisation. It's a predictable output of specific inputs, which means the ramen economy isn't a story about who prisoners are. It's a story about what their situation is. Back to the 25 cents. Outside, it's nothing. A ramen pack is a broke week backup, a late night impulse buy. The price doesn't register as a financial decision. You eat it or you don't. Inside, that same pack has an exchange rate against labor, information, safety. Someone with enough of them has something rare in that environment: options. The ability to call in a favor, absorb a problem before it becomes a crisis, pay for something they need without having to ask for it. Somewhere tonight, someone in a state facility is counting their packs the way you'd check a bank balance, not to eat them, as a ledger, as an answer to how much control they have over what happens to them next week. What changed wasn't the noodles. What changed was that specific decisions about food budgets, about what adequate means, about how much deprivation a closed population is supposed to manage quietly, created a gap large enough that people built an entire monetary system just to navigate it. The ramen economy didn't emerge despite those decisions. It exists because of them. That's the 25 cents